Upfront Books presents The Best War Ever, America and World War II, 2nd edition, written by Michael C.C. Adams and narrated by Alister. With your purchase of this audiobook, you have received a PDF containing maps and samples of advertisements from World War II, as well as a bibliography. These figures are occasionally referenced in the audiobook and contribute to your increased enjoyment of the material. Dedication to David A. Steeves, Jeffrey R. Gleer, and Christopher T. Adams, brothers of mine. Preface to the 2nd edition. The Best War Ever was first published in 1994 with the stated purpose of presenting a balanced view of World War II that avoided the extremes of glorification with sayings such as, "This was the good war," and vilification with sayings such as, "We were no better than our enemies." The concept seems to have succeeded as the book has found favor with many readers, especially undergraduates and their professors. It has gone through 9 printings. Having reached the 20th anniversary of publication, a good lifetime for any book of its kind, a decision had to be made as to whether we would produce a 2nd edition or should let the work sink into a quiet scholarly grave. For many years, I was not convinced that revisions would add much to our picture of the war. Recently, however, I have concluded that developments in historical understanding and changing contemporary interests justify a new edition. For example, the debate over the effectiveness and morality of the Western Ally strategic bombing campaigns has moved forward. As another instance, advances in medical science enable us to see that the personality damage sustained by combat veterans was rooted not only in reliving the nightmare emotionally, suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, but also in radial physical wounds to the head, that is, traumatic brain injuries. The Walter Reed Army Medical Center now considers these conditions together. Due in part to the determined research of my fellow Northern Kentucky University Regents professor J. Robert Lilly, breaking a veil of silence, we now know significantly more about the widespread incidents of sexual assault by U.S. military personnel upon civilians, at least in the European theater. On the home front, I underplayed in my original conception of the book the impact of the war on the nascent development of an American social welfare system, including Social Security and Medicare. Perhaps because those issues were not such burning topics in 1994. These and other areas of current public interest that have roots in the war era are now woven into the text. In a chapter on myth-making and World War II, the 1st edition dealt with the rise of the good war myth, along with the counter-arguments of critics who challenged the triumphalist narrative. Although by 1994 it was clear how the dominant perception of the war was trending, veneration of the 1940s generation had not yet reached its peak. This came with the later work of revered historian Stephen E. Ambrose, along with the complementary writing of journalist Tom Brokaw, author of the phrase, "the greatest generation," to describe 1940s Americans, and the further contributions of those who shared their views. We have now advanced sufficiently on the historical timeline to plot more fully the ascendancy of the good war legend. By the late 1990s, it seemed that the popular presentation of the conflict as the best war ever had become fixed in the public mind as the illegitimate version of the past, and that this perception would not change. Yet almost immediately in the 21st century, the centrality of the myth to American thought and action appeared to waver, and the narrative seemingly has moved into eclipse. In a new chapter, called The Life Cycle of a Myth and placed appropriately at the end of the book, I chart the long struggle to define the nature of the war, the reasons that the romanticized version triumphed, and why this characterization suddenly seems less relevant in shaping attitudes and policies. I also try to delineate the societal pitfalls that occur when a flawed view of an earlier era is used to predicate present policies and public actions. History is never just a thing of the past, but an active factor in our life.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?